Here's a weaken the argument question. Let's keep our strategy in mind. While reading the argument for the first time, we are going to try to map the argument, create a mental map of it. In reasoning questions, this usually means identifying the facts and identifying the author's conclusion. Since facts are fixed, the part that we need to weaken is the author's point of view. And remember, this is often at the end. It often contains words such as clearly and therefore. So we already really know which part we need to weaken. But let's look at the factual part first, just to make sure that we see the conclusion within the context of the evidence that the author is giving us. In 2011, 10% of Lariat Rent-A-Car's total number of customers complained about the services provided by the company. In 2012, the number of complaints received by the company increased to 15%. The nature of the complaints has remained focused on the quality of the cars used by the company and on the delay in responding to queries made by customers. Clearly, therefore, although Lariat has claimed that it has taken measures to improve its service, customer dissatisfaction has increased significantly. The thing to remember in any critical reasoning question is don't be in a hurry to get to the options. First, make sure you've identified what you want to prove. Here we want to weaken the author's conclusion that customer dissatisfaction has increased significantly. So what would be the opposite of this? Customer dissatisfaction has not increased. That is what we want to prove. There has been no increase in customer dissatisfaction. Note that this does not mean that there has been a decrease. It could have remained the same. Now, at first glance, this appears to conflict with the factual part given in the argument. There are two sets of figures given. One for the year 2011, in which 10% of the total number of customers complained about the services, and the following year it increased to 15%. So clearly this is factual, so this has to be true. Clearly there has been an increase in the number of complaints received by the company. 5% more customers are now giving complaints. However, we want to prove despite this increase in the number of complaints, customer dissatisfaction has not increased. So there has been some other reason for the customers to make more complaints. Now, why would customers make more complaints if they are not dissatisfied? So this is a little tricky, but looking at the options should give us a better idea. Which of the following, if true, most seriously weakens the argument? Some Lariat centers received a smaller percentage of complaints than others. This option is too narrow in its scope because it's only talking about some centers, whereas we're talking about customer dissatisfaction in the company as a whole. Option B says car rental agencies have had an upsurge in customers over the last 12 months. So although it's relevant to the context, it's not really helping us to weaken the argument at all, because more customers in the industry in general does not tell us anything about whether the customers of this particular agency are dissatisfied or not. C says there have been more complaints about the customer service than about the quality of the cars. So C is actually making a distinction between two kinds of complaints, whereas the author is not coming to the conclusion that one kind of complaint is greater than another. So that's out. This leaves us with two choices. As usual, the two choices that are left tend to be very close to each other, so let's read them carefully. D says Lariat recently introduced an online customer service forum that makes it easier for customers to file complaints. Very likely because it's giving us a reason. It's not that customers are increasingly dissatisfied with the company, it's just that now it's easier for them to file complaints, suggesting that some of the customers who were dissatisfied earlier and did not file complaints because it was not easy to do so can now easily file complaints. meaning that the number of customers who are dissatisfied has not really changed. It's just that it's easier for them to make complaints. But let's consider E also. Never leave an option unread. E says, of all the car rental companies in the country, Lariat has received at least as many complaints as other service providers. So although this is again relevant to the context, it says that Lariat has received a considerable number of complaints. That's not what we want to weaken. We don't want to weaken the number of complaints that the companies receive. We want to weaken the conclusion that there has not been an increase in customer dissatisfaction. D is giving us a reason to do so.